Okay everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video on Gran Turismo 7. I'm back with a previous week's daily race at Le Mans in the Group C cars with dynamic weather and day to night, back to day transition with the time of day. Now for this race, we've got extreme heavy rain and I decided to start on the heavy wet tire. So the full wet tire, which was rarely used during this week's races, but we took a risky strategy and hoping it'll pay off. Let's see if it does. Remember, if you do enjoy this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the Key 25 on YouTube. Let me know in the comment section what you thought about this week's races and also what you think about this race. Always interested to see what the comments say. Thanks for watching, everyone. So you can see here, it was a fairly decent lobby. We've got some reasonably fast drivers in this race. We're starting from P11 towards the back of the grid there, deliberately not setting a fast lap to make it a little bit more interesting for people watching. Now, I had to record the very first few seconds of this race from the recorded content on the PlayStation. Then we're going to go through to the live footage so you can actually see the proper live action with the telemetry on. Now, if you are interested in the telemetry that we're about to show you, do feel free to use the link that's in the description to download that for yourself and use it to help you in your races with the tyre temperatures and many other things. But you can see there, we've got the action on there, the telemetry's on, and let's get into this. Starting from the back there, you can see we're on the full wet tyre like I mentioned before, and you can see at the start of the race, it was actually Inter's condition for the first lap, and this is where it was a risky strategy. It was heavy rain, but when you see the radar, you'll see why I decided to take a huge risk with the full wet tyres in this race. So managed to hold on to P12 here at the start here. You can see now as we go to the radar, a lot of yellow rain around, green rain. It's gonna get absolutely torrential in this combination for this race. So we're getting the slipstream on the straight there. You can see bump drafting as usual on Gran Turismo. I know it's not the best with the slipstream, but it is how this game is at the moment, so we all have to do this. Everyone's going to bump draft on the straight, because if you don't, you're just going to lose so much time because the slipstream is so strong. So yeah, a lot of bump drafting at the start here to try and gain that momentum down this straight, and obviously to try and catch up to the front runners. And you can see just how much of an advantage it gives you. So again, we're going to bump this guy from the right hand side to try and see if we can get past the car on the left, which we managed to do, and put ourselves back up to P11 there. And now we're going to come into that heavy braking zone. Now you can see the rain is starting to get a little bit heavier now. It's getting a little bit closer to that bar which says, you know, intermediates are going to stop working. At this point, the intermediates are still an advantage, but the wets should give us pretty good braking power there, which it does. We managed to slow the car down with plenty of time. The car in front of us goes a little bit wide. We try and take a slightly tighter line. We get a little bit better traction, and now we're going to use a little bit more revs with this car. Now, it isn't necessarily the quickest way to do this, but what it does do is it gives you a little bit of advantage to get a little bit closer to the slipstream of the car in front. You can see that's actually worked out quite nice for us using that extra little bit of revs, and we're up into P9. So a decent start so far, gained through positions, and you can see now that rain has definitely picked up. It's got a lot wetter now. As we go into the braking zone here, we thought we had braked too late, but we used first gear and managed to hold it with giving space on the outside. Fusa saw it coming. Luckily, he gave us the space there on the outside, but I don't think he expected us to actually make that, and we actually did an accidental overtake there. We braked too late, but managed to slow it down and still give space on the outside. So got away with that one. We see cars with penalties there, and we're up to P7 and working our way up into this next group. And now you can actually see on the telemetry for how wet it is, it's actually hit the limit of what the intermediates can deal with now. So at this stage, the full wets should start getting a little bit grippier, and as we go to that full screen here of the replay camera, you can just see how wet this is at the moment. It's absolutely torrential. Everyone's struggling. You can see a car off the track there. People are struggling for the traction, the grip. You can see again running wide there. We're up into P6 and we're just trying to see if we can survive this phase here. Just get through. Nothing you can really do in terms of overtaking through there, and then maybe go for a move into the braking zone before we go into the chicane. So as we come through here, you can see we're going for a move on P5. We managed to make that work, nearly making a move on P4, but backed out of that, tucked into P5, and a nice little overtake there to put us into that top 5 already after one lap. Now you can see there, Brown Banana came off the wet tyre after lap 1, and he's off into the pits to go on to the intermediates. Now the advantage of doing that is you get the drying up a track effect. So every car that is on the track dries the track up to an extreme rate on Gran Turismo. It's a little bit unrealistic, but yeah, that is the way this track works. So you get a huge advantage from pitting early because the track is drier for you as you come out of the pits. You have a much drier track and you gain sometimes up to like 5 to 10 seconds in a lap just because of that. But we're staying out because we think it might be getting a little bit heavier this rain on this lap. So At this stage, I'm going to stay out and stick it out at the front, just in case there's any chaos at the back. Play for the safer route here and see if we can get ourselves towards the front. You can see here, we're managing to get ourselves up past P3, past P2, and now we're heading after the leader in this race. So really good traction there on the 4 wet tyres, and you can see the intermediate tyres are definitely struggling at this stage of the race. You can see that the people that are on the inters are struggling to get the traction, they're struggling to the grip, and at this point staying on the wets seems to be working quite nicely. And now we're going to get the slipstream from Flash in front of us, and we're going to try and go for an overtake. You see we've got bump drafting. We don't really want to hit too hard at this stage. If you hit someone too hard, you get massive SR downs. So we go for the overtake, and you can see there's a bit of a slipstream bomb drafting battle going on here. We've got 2 different groups, but we managed to get past there with the extra momentum. And now we're going to go back over to the right hand side for the right hand corner that's coming up. Now again, you're going to see 2 groups try and separate, and you're going to see as we come through here, we actually get the bump draft from the car that follows us. So we're going to hold on to P1 and see if we can hold this position now into the braking zone. So this is always nervous when you've got a slipstream train like this going into the braking zone. You never know, but luckily Gran Turismo does actually put ghosting on there. Although it's not the most realistic, sometimes it does save a lot of chaos. And you can see there the advantage again on the exit where this track is really wet. These 4 wet tyres give us a real amount of traction advantage over them intermediate tyres, considering that we've got the wettest part of the track now, because with that drying up the track effect, every car behind us has a quicker track. So for us at the moment, being on the 4 wets is definitely helping out. If we were on inters now, we'd be really struggling with the grip and we'd probably be losing a lot of lap time. But with the 4 wets, we're actually managing to stay ahead, going a little bit deep into that corner. You can see there it was a lot wetter than we expected as we got to the braking phase, but just about managing to keep it on the track. And you can just see how treacherous this is right now. It's in the night time, extremely heavy rain. We're trying to survive at this stage, and now we're going to be coming into that really fast flowing section, which this is where the 4 wet tyre should give us an advantage, because you can see now on the telemetry for the tyre wetness, it's actually on that darker shade of blue. That means you really need the 4 wets for this part of the track. Now every car behind us will have a slightly drier track, so for them they might be able to get away with the intermediates, but for us it's an advantage to be on the 4 wets here. And you can see it's actually helping us out here. We're actually managing to stay ahead, and you can see we're actually starting to build a little bit of a gap there. You can see it's gone back up to 6 tenths, and it's starting to increase. And as we come through this next left hand corner, you can see there it's at nearly 7-8 tenths. And then as we get on the power with third gear, you can see the advantage of them wet tyres taking effect again, and you can see we've managed to just keep ourselves in that lead. You can see the car behind doing okay though, managing to keep it within half a second. And then as we go through the chicane again here, you can see taking quite a nice line with the 4 wet tyres, and we actually managed to build up quite a nice gap through this section. This is where it really did help us out there, and we got that gap over 1.5 seconds. So they're actually slightly out the slipstream at this stage, and you can see now they're fully out, and we got that gap to 2 seconds. So strategy is working out quite nicely at this stage. Now as we skip to the end of lap 3, you can see we managed to keep that gap and actually extend it slightly. However, we've got the cars that would have pitted early. There would have been quite a few cars that pitted the end of lap 1 and the end of lap 2 to deal with. So it's going to be interesting by the time we put these inters on where we actually come out. Now you can see some of the cars behind us decide to stay out, and that is probably going to be a mistake, because like I said before, you want to get the drying up effect of the track. So as we come out the pits, you can see there we are into P14 is what it's saying, but it's not actually going to be technically P14 by the time everyone does their pit stops. So you can see Fuza in front of us has obviously pitted either the end of lap 1 or the end of lap 2, and he's got a massive advantage from that drying up track and actually got himself ahead of ourselves with a 1.2 second gap. But however, now the problem for Fuza is obviously we're behind him, so we're going to get a slightly drier track, and you can just see how much he's struggling there with how wet this is at this stage of the race. But we have got fresh inters on that should help towards the end as it starts drying up, so the advantage should start coming back to ourselves at that phase of the race. So we're going to get the slipstream off Fuza all the way down this straight, and you can see the gap to P1 is 21 seconds. Now keep your eye on that gap, because it's very relevant to what we're talking about with the drying effect on Gran Turismo 7. It's something that I hope they can look at for certain tracks. It doesn't happen on all tracks, but particular tracks that it does happen on, Le Mans and Nordschleife, the effect is massive and a little bit unrealistic. So we're going to bump draft Fuza all the way down these straights, and then we're going to go for the move up the inside here, and you can see there he's going to hold that line but goes a little bit too deep. We then cut back on the inside. Some really good racing going on there, And you can see there by the end of the 2 straights, you can see the gap's already gone down by 4 seconds there. So you can already see the advantage. And then you can see again on the traction zone, we just gained another 1 second on the leaders just through traction of the drying up effect. And it's actually pretty crazy how this works. And again, you'll see as we come through this final sector here, as we're trying to warm the tyres up here, trying to get a bit of heat into the tyres, because you can see on the telemetry just how cold them front tyres are, the intermediates. They are freezing cold. So trying to get a little bit of grip there. And you can see again, as we're coming through, we've just gained another 1 second on the leader just in them 2 corners. And again, another 1 second there in them corners. And then again, another 1 second through here. It's absolutely crazy how much quicker the track is when you're further back in the field. And that is why people do these strategies where you give yourself that drying up effect. So bear that in mind when you're in these races with dynamic weather. Some tracks do have this quite unrealistic effect of the drying up effect, and yeah, it does add a little bit of a strategy element to it. It does make it interesting, but I really wish they'd try and solve whatever the problem is with these tracks that does it. But you can see with that, we are going to go through the start straight, and we are now up into P11. Now remember, a lot of cars still haven't pitted, and that gap has gone from 21 seconds in a lap to 10.5 seconds in 1 lap. That is the effect that you can gain through being in the right part of the track at the right time. It's pretty crazy. But you can see again with the visuals changing into the morning now, Gran Turismo 7 looking absolutely stunning, as it always does. I don't feel like there's a game that can really compete with Gran Turismo's on pure visuals, but yeah, it does look amazing. It's very hard. LMU looks amazing, but in terms of pure visuals, Gran Turismo does just such an insane job with how it looks in these conditions. And again there, we're going to skip a little bit further there onto the straight. Fusa's going to go for the move, so we're going to give him a bump here, and then we're going to try and get ourselves back past him because we can see a car a little bit further ahead. So what I am trying to do here is get the slipstream to Fusa, going to try and get back in front of him, and then try and pick up the slipstream to P10 if we can, to hold that position. So into the braking zone, and now we're going to try and get a good traction from the exit. Now watch what Fusa does. He uses a ghosting system. He goes through our car, but then the problem with doing that is as he on-ghosts on the outside, we've got nowhere to go because he's gone through our car, and he loses a little bit of time on the exit. So yeah, again, the ghosting system can work well in some situations. It can be a bit gimmicky in other situations, but luckily for us, we're still in P11, and now we're hunting down the cars in front of us, and this is going to get very, very interesting. You can see the dry line appearing. This is now full intermediate conditions, as Fusa had a little look up the inside there, but again, that's not going to work, and he has a little bit of a lag behind us there, but luckily no contact with ourselves. So again, that drying up effect is still taking place, but not to the extreme extent that it was before, because we're a little bit closer now. So you can see still gaining, but now 8.5 seconds behind, but they haven't pitted yet, so we're going to get such a huge jump on them when they get in the pits and lose their pit stop. So yeah, we are going to be way ahead of the leaders in this race as we overtake P11 there and put ourselves up a position, as Fusa also goes for a brave overtake on the inside of the corner, makes that move work, and stays in our slipstream all the way through this final sector now, where you can really see we're able to start pushing a bit. The track's drying out, there's intermediate conditions, we can start pushing the limits a little bit further and try and keep the car on that dry line through them corners, because that's where the grip's going to be at the moment. So you can see at this stage it's still probably too wet to go onto the dry tyres, so most drivers are going to probably just pit and keep them intermediates on, or pit and change to intermediates from the full wets. But you can see a lot of drivers into the pits. We're now up to what is saying P4. Let's see if that alters again. So now we're up to P3. So you can see the advantage that has gave us that strategy, but we have got cars to catch up. You can see Brown, who pitted lap 1, has gained massively with that effect of the drying track. So he's gone from quite far back up into P1, but however now we've got 3 cars in this group. You can see just how close they are on this replay camera, and we're all going to be able to work together to try and catch up to the leader on the straight. And again, we're going to use that bump drafting, because that's how you gain a lot of speed on this track with the no chicane layout in these Group C cars. And again, you can see just trying to make sure we get a good exit off this corner onto the straight. Fusa loses a little bit of momentum through that corner. You can see we actually gained on the Mazda, because the Mazda's not quite as quick on the straight on the fast corners compared to the Sauber Mercedes that we're in. And you can see we're going to get into the slipstream and give this Mazda the bump draft. And you can see there Fusa half a second back, and he's going to struggle to get close enough now to really be able to bump draft ourselves. And you can see by the time we get to the end of the straight, we've managed to hold on. However, Fusa completely misses the brakes. Luckily, the ghosting system works, and he avoids killing anyone at the end of the straight. So that's Fusa out of this battle for the lead. However, you can just see how close this is to the leader now. We are only 8 tenths behind, so we're going to give a bump draft, and then we're going to go for the move on this next part of the straight. So you can see we're going to go for a brave move around the outside with these intermediate. We know we've got good intermediates versus other people in this race because they pitted a lot earlier. So we're going to send it around the outside, which we managed to do really well. We now hold the inside, and as we come into the apex of the corner, there's a little bit of contact there. Now, in my view, when we want to replay, you'll see why I think that was okay. We decided to carry on because I think we gave plenty of space on the exit, and now we're going to try and get the lead off of Brown Banana. You can see he's just not got the traction because he pitted a little bit earlier. His tyres are a little bit more warm, and we're going to get that 4th gear with the slipstream and go over to the left hand side. Now, what we do here is really important. We don't change gear. If you listen, you hear him change gear. We keep the revs going, and that gives us the ability to really send it in, get ourselves into the lead of this race, and now try and hold on to keep this P1. So all about just trying to keep it away from the track limits. Just don't get a penalty before the end, because it's very easy to pick up a 1-second penalty at Le Mans at the end of this sector here, just by taking a little bit too much off the chicane. You can see the advantage we've got with the tyres. It looks like Brown Banana's tyres have had enough. They've already dropped off by 1.2 there, so we're okay. We just got to take it nice and easy, no risks, over the curb, again over the curb, brake for this final corner, using a little bit of curb, and then again flat out to the finish for a very well-earned win. That was a really fun race, thoroughly enjoyed it. But let's have a little look at that incident that we had the overtake on. Now, he wasn't very happy with this, but you can see we're on the inside, we're ahead, then he comes off the brakes. At that point, you saw him accelerate, and then he goes wide. And now we're on the tight line here, and you can see as we play it forward slowly, you can see he starts turning in now a little bit too early. We're on right up against the curb still, and you can see he's turning. And at this point, there's only a car's width to the apex, and he had plenty of space on the outside, and we can see his front left tyre hits our rear right. I think we had the right to that corner. So again, we left space on the outside anyway as well. If he would have took a wider line, he would have actually got the momentum and had the inside for the next right-hand corner, but he turned in a little bit too early. I think that move was fair. And yeah, a very well-earned P1 in that race. A thoroughly enjoyable race. Hit that like button if you enjoyed that video. Get subscribed. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this week. It was one of my favourite weeks in quite some time. But yeah, I'll see you all again soon. Bye, everyone.